Well, good morning, everybody. The primary events we've been talking about over the last 4 or 5 days here are starting to take shape here. And over the next 3 to 4 days, these are the systems that are going to be tracking across the country. So let's kind of break it down real quick here on radar. This is about a 12-hour loop. We're watching the first tropical pulse of moisture that spread some decent rains across parts of southern Texas, getting into Louisiana this morning. This is going to continue into the southeast. We do have the risk for some stronger to severe storms here, plus some locally very heavy rainfall. We have the frontal boundary on which this next big low is going to ride. That's moving out of parts of Kansas, getting into Missouri, Iowa, and eventually into Illinois later on this morning. That front's going to end up lining out right in through this area, right in through here before the big system, the one that's coming into the west right now, starts to kind of push out of the Rockies and into the plains. That's still, over the next 36 hours what we're going to be watching. So this is a relatively slow progression. It's been interesting to forecast this week, just knowing that each day is just a small update on the day before. But this did locally produce some heavy rain in parts of the Pacific Northwest, and it's a pretty potent and deep blow. We're starting to see our all hazards weather map get a little more colorful here. So this was 5:55 this morning as I was recording. We had the frost advisories that were still out here. We did have, throughout the Intermountain West, we have winter weather advisories. We've got we've got high wind warnings. We've also got the frost and freeze issues, and then stronger winds on the south side of this like we've been talking about. But I want to come back to the winds right in through this area because this particular system is going to be tightly wrapped. It's going to be moving relatively slowly, which means it's going to spread a very large wind field across the central plains of the United States and eventually east, over which we could expect to see 30 to 60 mile an hour gusts. We're going to take a look at that in a second. And also, I know we don't have the wind advisories that are out all the way over into the southeast, but this system that's coming out of the tropics here, the one that was born in the Bay of Campeche, it's got quite a bit of wind in it as well. So maybe we start off on the temperature side of this. I just pulled this up, 6 a.m. temperatures this morning, and what we've got here is that narrow ribbon right in through here of the really cold air. Now, just to make a point as to why it's only here and not in here or on the other side. Well, on the back side of this, we've got winds coming out of the south already. And on the east side of this, where there's the low, we have a lot of cloud cover in this area and stronger winds. So it's only this narrow band in through here that's got calmer winds, clear skies, and the ability to radiatively cool very quickly. So that's why we saw the temperatures bottom out there again. That's why the frost advisories extend pretty far into the Ohio Valley early this morning. All right, from here, let's go take a look at the last 48 hours of total accumulated precip. So we're starting to see these things gather again, right? There's our upper level low, leaving its front, the rainfall on the back side of it, and then here's some of the rain we've already seen coming in to Texas. Now, if you ever go look at these maps, I just want to remind you of something. I produce them every hour, but the data almost always have like a 2-hour lag to it, and that's for quality control. This is the quality control. So in other words, they are comparing it to rain gauges, making sure that there's no highly anomalous values that don't match surrounding precipitation, and to clean up some of the data here. So if you go look at this map like moments after it rains and it shows nothing, well, it's going to take a couple hours for it to really show up here because it's a much better product once it's gone through that quality control. But this is what we've got coming. And by later on today, this is what the wind field is going to look like. So I mentioned some stronger winds here. This is the low that's coming through parts of the southeastern Florida. That was coming out of the Bay of Campeche. You notice that Max and Lydia look like they're gone. That's because they've gone right now over the mountainous areas of Mexico. And then we're going to watch this much deeper low begin to kind of really gather its strength. And as you look at this, just take a look. You see that boundary right through there? That's the warm front on which this thing is going to ride. There's going to be a really strong temperature gradient along that warm front. Not quite as strong as the one that's to the south, though, which is where the cold front is, where the temperatures are expected to change pretty dramatically as this system rolls through. It does have a severe risk to it. Today we're going to watch Florida, and we're also going to watch that frontal boundary right in through here for the risk of some stronger storms. But as we get into tomorrow, the 12th, this is when the low begins to curl itself up. So we're going to watch that triple point. We talked about it earlier this week in Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas. This has been a very difficult one to forecast, I imagine, for me and for the National Weather Service because of the lack of a southward extent of this severe weather risk. What's going on here is that the frontal boundary is moving pretty quickly. The atmosphere won't be able to destabilize in quite the same manner that it will here, but we're going to have so much more frontal forcing in this area to initiate some of these storms. And that's why I think it's more confined to this region. It doesn't spill down into the southern plains. There's several other reasons to that too, but that's the main focus here. As we then work our way into Friday the 13th here, we're going to watch over parts of Illinois as that frontal boundary slides through for the risk of some stronger storms as well. So let's go ahead and have a look at it. We're going to go right to our high-res models. This is the high-res NAM. Let's pick it up right about 8 o'clock this morning. There we go. So watch those pieces unfold. Ready? So through the middle of the day today, getting into this evening, heavy rains spread under that shield of clouds with the tropical pulse. Here's your frontal boundary that slid out of Missouri into western Illinois, north central Illinois, Indiana, and Iowa, and watch right over here. This is as the upper level system finally moves its way over Wyoming by late tonight, early tomorrow morning, and now you can see the boundary on which it's going to ride. Right there's that front. So these systems are all daisy chained together. So you can see there's a low up here. The new one's going to form. It's going to follow that same path. And we're going to watch this tropical pulse finally move its way out of Florida through Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. So this is 8 a.m. tomorrow on Thursday, playing through the middle of the day tomorrow. So you can start to see where the biggest storms are likely going to be, right in through this area. And then we're going to play this out through Thursday night, getting into Friday morning. That's when the low curls up. The main lead front, this is actually a combination of 3 fronts. There's actually a significant push of drier air. There's a cold front stretched in through here. And all along this whole feature, there's an upper level front that curls in. And it's all going to push this flow right across Iowa, Missouri, into Illinois, Wisconsin. And that's where we expect things to look by Friday afternoon. So the risk of some stronger storms rolling through this area. Okay, stitch it all together, and this map still looks very similar to what I showed you all week long. Because of how slow that system's moving, we're still watching this whole region in through here to pick up, anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inches of rainfall, some locally heavier amounts. There are just very well-defined boundaries between these two systems, though, where it's going to be much, much drier. So much of the southern plains getting into the lower Mississippi River Valley, where, of course, we're watching the Mississippi River, and then all throughout this part of the Tennessee Valley, getting over the Blue Ridge Mountains into North Carolina. But you go down south again, very heavy rainfall. Canadian Prairie, very dry. And remember, a lot of what you see here in the Pacific Northwest is from the next system that rolls through that particular area. Just for some broader context on where this rainfall is going to hit, this is our latest 100 centimeter or 40-inch soil moisture values projected by NASA. And again, we're going to be seeing some nice corrective, action here and in through here. But areas in between are not expected to see much precipitation at all. And just to put this even into more context, given we watched the drought monitor expand in the southeast, that's an area that desperately needs more rainfall. And we can, of course, find all these other regions that need to be discussed, but I'm just thinking about this broader region down here that's going to get some of this rain out of that tropical pulse that's coming in through this region. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other kind of threat factors with this storm system. This is the high-resolution NAM model, and what we're going to do is we're going to play out maximum accumulated wind gusts. So we're just trying to look at where we're expecting from now through midday Friday to have our strongest winds. Now, the NAM model can capture thunderstorm scale winds, but most of what you're seeing here is synoptic scale, so larger scale. And just to get you oriented, this is, 40 plus mile an hour range of colors here. So it's a broad area that could expect to see wind gusts at times topping 40 miles an hour, some places higher than that. So this is a pretty potent system overall rolling through this area, and you can see down south that the winds down here have been forecast stronger as well. Now remember, before this all gets going, it's all here. This is where we have our wind advisories out today, southern parts of California into the Four Corner states. And we're also watching for some stronger winds in the Pacific Northwest as well. All right. Now, I wanted to show you the moisture side of this because of really the contrast and then the drier air that follows it. So this is a dew point temperature map. So when you look at this, think of these colors as being very dry air and these colors as being air with quite a bit of moisture in it. As we play through, today getting into tomorrow when this system really gets going, this is Thursday afternoon, getting into Thursday evening. Look at this by Friday morning, afternoon. Look at the contrast in the humidity levels and the moisture levels and the dew point right along that boundary. Very, very dry air spilling out of the Rocky Mountains, getting into southern Texas. With this drier air, we are expecting colder conditions, clear skies. We're going to watch for a frost as far north as like Amarillo. And then we're going to watch this system tap into that moisture, delivering it here on Friday. But I'm just going to play quicker from here. Watch how much dry air barrels in behind this. So these are dew point temperatures down there in the low 30s and upper 20s coming through the Midwest. So it's going to be a big push at drier air following this. We're just going to have to wait until the next system comes through and opens the Gulf back up. See it? Can you see it open here? This is next Thursday into Friday. So about a week from now, we got another system to talk about. And that's that whole week on, week off pattern. Let's go have a look at it by comparing the GFS to the European. So GFS left, European right. We have watched through already with the high-res models about this point. This will be Thursday night. So that's after the heavy rains have moved out from the tropical push. Then we're going to watch the snow on the back side of it. It is in both models. We'll take a look at the probabilities for snow in just a moment. And then we're going to see Thursday night getting into Friday morning that the models are now in much better agreement on the timing of this. Remember, the GFS was much more progressive. I mentioned I was going to follow the European because the European, I think, had the pattern right and the speed right. And we've seen them now come into much better alignment. See that? So that's Friday evening getting into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday evening. So this is when it pushes through the mid-Atlantic, delivering some heavy rain. And there's been some locally extremely heavy rainfall here in the last 30 days. So we're going to watch out for that. So that system then clears. We got a lot of cold, dry air behind it. We'll take a look at the frost risk in a second. And then it's going to go to next Monday, Tuesday to watch the next low come into the Pacific Northwest. Now, we noticed this in the ensembles that the GFS took this next system more toward British Columbia. The European model kind of pushed it through the Pacific Northwest. So there's already significant differences only out about 6 days here in the forecast looking at the Pacific Northwest. But while this system comes on, that upper level low just sits and spins here. So pesky cloud cover and showers in this area to start next week. And as we get out there to Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to watch these lows come across the country. And again, about a week from now, we're going to watch another system coming through the midsection of the country. So that's that week on, week off pattern we've been talking about recently. All right, how about some snow? This would be the next 5 days. This is the chance of getting an inch. So a lot of this, of course, is in our mountains, all right? But it's the snow that's coming out of this part of Wyoming, South Dakota, and Nebraska that we're going to keep a close eye on right in through here. Here's the chance of getting 3 inches. So it's not zero here. So we're going to watch this carefully. There's better than a 50% chance right into this part of Nebraska that we're going to get that. And of course, right here in the Black Hills, we're going to be seeing heavier snows. Then we look up there, might as well go take a look at 6. So I just want you to see that there are some decent chances of seeing, some quite a bit of snow here. Spreading it back out to the whole country, looking at the probability of an inch over the next 10 days. Of course, it's highest in those 3 quarters we've been discussing. Here's the probability of 2 inches, though. Take a look at that. Much higher into here, and of course, very wet down south. And with 2 systems coming into the northwest, we've got our wetter weather here as well. On the dry side of this, chance of getting less than half an inch. So now we can look at the inverse and try to figure out those really dry spots using the European ensemble here. As we look out there beyond this, I want to show you what this pattern's up to. So we've already played through these systems, kind of just rolling to the south of this big blocking high we've talked about all week. Once we get out there to about Tuesday, Wednesday, the models kick that high out. So was it a block? Yeah, it was there for more than 10 days, but it's out, and we start to open up the pattern back to where it's been. Something more like that. That's what's going to keep quite a bit of cooler air in the southeast here overall. But still, I don't see any major indications that this whole pattern is just going to slow down and stop and get stuck. But right now, as that new deeper trough develops, the model trend has been for not nearly as wet as what the CPC is showing. If you take a look at both the European and the GFS, they're not as aggressive on the wetter conditions here when you look out in week 2. I think most of this is just coming from that system that's next Thursday, Friday coming through this area. But we've kind of trended a bit drier across the rest of the country as we look out there from the, about the 18th to the 24th into that time frame. All right, so with that look at the week 2 pattern, let's go talk about the temperatures, because this is what the 24-hour temperature change looks like. So every time one of these lows begins to form in the west, they gather a lot of moisture and heat in the central U.S. And so you can already see the temperatures 10 to 20 degrees warmer in this area than they were yesterday. We're going to expect to see that to continue to warm, because today's highs, look at this, we're going to be touching 90 degrees in parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. We're out deep into the 80s in Missouri. We'll go from Wednesday into Thursday, and there's our front. Look at that. And there's the cold front with the dry air behind it. And as I talked about yesterday, as this front dives in here, coming out of Wyoming and South Dakota and Nebraska, it's going to knock temperatures off about 40 degrees by the time we get into Friday and Saturday right here in the Central Plains. And remember, as this low spins up, it's going to be producing some pretty windy conditions here. So this is going to be a pretty raw weekend for a lot of folks in this area as this rolls through. As we get into Sunday into Monday, another shot at some really cold air coming into the south and southeast, while the west goes back over warm as that ridge begins to reform early next week. And that's what it looks like by Tuesday. Frost threat over the next 7 days shown in gray here, so a lot of it, this is this morning, but this is the big push at colder air coming in behind this system we just talked about. Your temperature pattern favors more warmer conditions west as we move forward. Here's your next 5 days. This plays out day 5 through 10, and then this is day 10 through 15. So again, we continue to see most of October favoring cooler weather for the eastern half of the country. And I'll just say this again, while I'm preparing a new long-range update, which I hope to give you by the end of this week or early next week, I just want you to remember that October, what happens in October doesn't tell you what's going to happen in winter. October is a transition month, so we'll watch for it carefully. Let's flip this over to some information on South America. I wanted to show you that we had a new update from our satellite-based root zone soil moisture data from NASA and its GRACE mission, and not a whole lot of change. We're still identifying our driest areas over here in like Bahia and then down into Argentina and parts of Uruguay. Flooding in southern Brazil, parts of Paraguay, but near normal soil moisture values, right here in some of Brazil's main growing areas. So please keep that in mind as you watch this forecast. We have yet to see the full, onset of the monsoon. What I mean by that is we still are pulling our wind out of the subtropics and through here, which is drier. When it makes a pull a bit farther to the north, that's when the full monsoon comes on. But you can see the contrast in these two air masses, the colder air from the south, the warmer air coming off the ridge to the north. I do mean a physical ridge and topography here. And that's where the boundary is setting up. And this is where our extremely heavy rainfall continues to be. So you look over the next 10 days, we have several areas in here that are 2 to 4 inches above average. This again includes parts of Paraná, Santa Catarina, northern Rio Grande do Sul. Models trended a bit drier in sections of Mato Grosso, getting over to Goiás and Tocantins, so this is important, this drier trend in here. I don't think it's going to slow down planting, only because there seems to be halfway decent soil moisture, and there is still rain in that area. But I want to point out the dryness that you still continue to see. We talked about this a lot yesterday in Argentina's main growing region here. The heavier rains just over the headwaters of the Paraná River. Just to make a point, there has been rain. Watch this animation. This is from NASA's iMerge program. And you can see satellite drive rainfall. Look at this. So it's not, you got to be careful looking at the models and realize that there has been moisture getting into place here, which is enough to get these growers started on their planting. So we'll get a new planting update on Friday on the pace. And we did get some new long-range data from the ECMWF, and this is what its outlook shows us from the 20th of October to the 20th of November. So if I had to tell you there's an area of risk other than the flooding south, it's going to be the much delayed onset of the heavier rain in like Bahia. And that's an important area, very important area for rainfall to not move in early. So we might continue to see delays here. But this main corridor, we see closer to normal precipitation. Okay, last couple things to point out. Again, I'm building a new long-range forecast. I did want to make a point that we did have a new system named Sean, which means we only have T and V and W left on the name list to exhaust our 2023 name list. So will there be more? We still have more time in this hurricane season for tropical systems to form, but Sean is our newest one here. And I do want to point out, again, as you start thinking about this longer range with me, the Indian Ocean dipole has almost reached what it did in 2019. And this was a very rough year for a lot of places. So we need to talk about that, which I'm analyzing now. We'll put in my next long range. And we're also going to talk about the fact that the Bureau of Meteorology just released a new long-range forecast on El Nino. They are warning because of these two features for dire consequences for Australia in terms of drought and excessive heat. But I want to point out that when you go to when this El Nino should reach a peak in January, the Bureau of Meteorology is the most aggressive of all the forecasting models. Them and the French. NOAA is the weakest. And I'm not siding with NOAA because I'm an American. I'm siding with NOAA because I've seen the slowest progression of this El Nino happening. And I think that the likelihood of being closer to 2 degrees C is much higher than being closer to 3 degrees C, which is what we see here. So we'll watch it carefully and we'll talk about it later this week. Have a good one. Thanks.